Pope Leo XIV received Cardinal Sarah, and although the audience was held behind closed doors, news of it did not remain hidden. Word of the meeting leaked out through observers and quickly spread. What made this gathering remarkable is that it was not a routine event. It was a moment full of meaning, a conversation that could influence the balance of voices inside the church, and perhaps shape the future direction of this pontificate. This was not just any meeting. It was the first face-to-face encounter between Pope Leo XIV and Cardinal Sarah since the May conclave when the new pope was elected. That detail alone makes it historically significant. After months of speculation, silence, and questions left unanswered, these two important figures of the church finally came together. Many are wondering, why now? What did they discuss? And why could this moment mark a turning point? The news first spread through the website Non-Possum, which reported that during the meeting, Cardinal Sarah asked Pope Leo to intervene on the very controversial subject of fiducia supplicans. This is the Vatican document that has stirred intense debate, not only inside theological circles, but also in parishes, families, and communities around the world. The document allowed non-liturgical blessings for couples in irregular situations, something that many viewed as a gesture of pastoral care, but others saw as a step toward doctrinal confusion. To understand the weight of this meeting, we have to remember the context. Pope Leo inherited a church climate marked by tension. Doctrinal disputes had been growing, voices on both progressive and traditional sides were louder, and the faithful were calling for clarity and pastoral leadership. In that setting, a meeting with Cardinal Sarah was not a small step. It was part of something larger, a strategy of dialogue, listening, and perhaps reconciliation. The fact that the meeting was held in private gives it an even more delicate tone. It suggests that what was said inside those walls was important enough to be shielded from immediate interpretations or the sensational headlines of the media. It also highlights that both men wanted to speak openly, without pressure, and without outside interference. Pope Leo XIV is a new figure, chosen only last May. He carries on his shoulders the responsibility of guiding the universal church in a time of contrasts and divisions. His leadership has been described as attentive to listening, careful, and oriented toward a renewed sense of pastoral mission. Cardinal Sarah, on the other hand, is a voice that has long been recognized as strong, firm, and sometimes uncomfortable. As the former prefect of the Congregation for Divine Worship, he has never been afraid to emphasize the importance of silence, liturgy, and fidelity to tradition. His words often echo with those faithful who fear that modern changes could dilute centuries of teaching. So when Pope Leo and Cardinal Sarah met, two different paths crossed. And when paths like these cross, the meaning is multiplied. Sarah never speaks lightly. Each time he raises his voice, it comes from reflection and discernment. The Pope knows this very well. He also knows that voices like Sarah's represent an entire sensibility. Inside the church, a sensibility that cannot be ignored. That is why this meeting is not just a private moment. It is a sign of recognition. It is the beginning of a dialogue that could shape the future. It shows that Pope Leo wants to engage with every voice in the church, even those that are most critical. It also shows that Cardinal Sarah, for all his firm positions, respects the office of the Pope and is willing to bring his concerns directly to him. At the center of their discussion, according to reports, was the question of fiducia supplicans. This document, released under the previous pontificate, authorized blessings for couples in irregular unions. Immediately, reactions were divided. Some saw it as a step of openness and pastoral care. Others, including many bishops, cardinals, and theologians, worried it created confusion. They feared that it blurred the lines of Catholic teaching on marriage and blessing. Cardinal Sarah, faithful to his clarity, reportedly asked Pope Leo to step in and provide order. He wanted the Pope to bring coherence and prevent further division. What he expressed was not just his personal opinion. It reflected a broad concern. Parish priests, communities, and ordinary believers have been unsettled by this issue. Many do not know how to handle these instructions. For them, the question is not abstract. It affects daily life, parish practice, and the unity of faith. This is why the Pope now finds himself at a crossroads. It is not only about one Vatican document. It is about how Catholic doctrine is lived and perceived in the daily lives of the faithful. Sarah's request points to the urgency of clarity, so that communities are not fractured and so that the heart of Catholic pastoral care remains strong and united. Just a week before this meeting, Cardinal Sarah had given an interview to the newspaper On Air. In it, he spoke with his usual frankness, but also with respect and trust in the Pope. He recognized that Pope Leo is trying to bring Christ back to the center of the church. He praised him for avoiding both extremes, the danger of a rootless progressivism that forgets tradition, and the danger of a sterile conservatism that turns tradition into a museum piece. Sarah had warned that the church today faces two equally risky paths. On one side are those who want to erase tradition in the name of modern culture, reducing faith to a passing fashion. On the other side are those who want to freeze tradition, refusing to let it illuminate the present. The true way forward, Sarah said, is to live tradition as a source of life for today. This shows that even though he often speaks as a critic, he also recognizes the value of balance and the responsibility of leadership. In that same interview, Sarah criticized the West for losing its focus on God. He accused Western culture of replacing faith with fragile idols, money, power, and success. He also reminded everyone that in the church, the Pope is not a master, but a servant of the gospel. He stressed that synodality is a means, not an end. In his words, you can see both his strength and his loyalty, strength in raising clear points, and loyalty in recognizing the Pope's role. When this background is combined with the private meeting, it becomes clear that the conversation between Pope Leo and Cardinal Sarah was not casual. It was the meeting of two voices who both cared deeply for the church. Though their approaches may differ, the themes they discussed are not small. At stake is the perception of marriage, blessings, liturgy, and the unity of Catholic faith. For centuries, these have been taught without confusion. But in today's world, with cultural changes and diverse opinions, clarity is more important than ever. The fact that the news came to light through Non-Possum adds another layer. This website is known to be close to traditionalist views. It often highlights tensions and contradictions in church governance. It is not a neutral voice. Still, the fact that the report was widely shared shows how sensitive the issue is. Even without official notes from the Vatican, the simple fact of the meeting and the request of Cardinal Sarah were enough to attract attention. The silence of official Vatican channels makes the event even more interesting. Silence can mean many things. It can mean that the issue is too delicate for a quick statement. It can mean that discussions are still underway. It can also suggest that the Pope wants to take time before making any public declaration. But whatever the reason, the absence of an official word leaves room for reflection, debate, and speculation. This is how the church often works. Important conversations happen quietly. They are not announced with loud signals. They are carefully discerned. The faithful, meanwhile, sense the weight of these events and wait for clarity. So, this meeting is not only about one audience. It is about a wider reality. It is about how the church navigates the balance between tradition and modernity, between pastoral care and doctrinal clarity, between listening and teaching. Pope Leo and Cardinal Sarah represent two paths, but both meet in the same desire, to serve Christ and the church. The private meeting between Pope Leo XIV and Cardinal Robert Sarah stands as a key moment, not only because of what was said, but also because of what it symbolizes. At its heart lies the question of how the church should guide the faithful in times of change. For centuries, Catholic teaching on marriage and blessings has been clear. Marriage has been understood as a sacrament between one man and one woman, permanent and faithful. Blessings, too, were always meant to point toward God's grace in a way that matched this teaching. But the modern world presents challenges. People today face complex situations. Families are broken, lives are complicated, and many are searching for God's blessing even if their circumstances do not fully align with church teaching. The document Fiducia Supplicans tried to respond to this pastoral reality by allowing certain blessings outside of liturgical marriage. Yet the way it was written created confusion. Many Catholics wondered, does this mean the church is changing its doctrine? Is it saying one thing but doing another? This is why Cardinal Sarah's concern was so strong. He has always defended clarity. For him, faith cannot be uncertain or double-sided. If a teaching has guided the church for centuries, then any new interpretation must be explained with great care. Otherwise, priests and parishes will not know what to do. The faithful will be left guessing, and division will grow. Sarah asked the Pope to act not to ignore pastoral needs, but to bring coherence, so that compassion and clarity go together. Pope Leo, for his part, carries the responsibility of being a pastor for all. He knows that the church must show mercy, but he also knows that mercy must never break with truth. The meeting with Sarah gave him the chance to hear directly the worries of one of the most respected voices of tradition. By listening, he showed that he is not afraid of dialogue. By holding the meeting privately, he showed that he wants reflection before public announcements. Observers quickly saw that this encounter was about more than one issue. It was about the relationship between different parts of the church. The church today has many voices. Some call for openness, some for tradition, and many for a balance between the two. A pope must hold all these voices together without losing sight of Christ. That is never easy, but history shows that when popes engage in dialogue with their critics, the church can move forward in unity. Cardinal Sarah is known for his deep spirituality. Silence, prayer, and fidelity to liturgy are the marks of his life. He often says that silence is where God speaks most clearly. In a noisy world, his insistence on silence has touched many faithful who feel overwhelmed by constant distraction. The fact that such a man chose to speak so directly about fiducia supplicans shows how serious the matter is. He is not someone who makes casual complaints. He speaks only when he feels it is necessary for the good of the church. For Pope Leo, this must also be a moment of discernment. Every pope inherits not only the responsibilities of his office, but also the debates and tensions that were present before his election. When he accepted the call to serve as the successor of Peter, he also accepted the task of guiding the church through these challenges. His style has been one of listening. From the beginning, he showed that he wants to bring together voices that might otherwise be ignored. Meeting Sarah confirms this. It shows his awareness that the traditional side of the church is vital, not marginal. The choice to keep the meeting private also deserves reflection. In today's media world, almost everything is public. Interviews, press conferences, and online statements dominate the conversation. But there is a wisdom in private dialogue. It allows the people to speak freely without fear of being misquoted or interrupted. It gives space for honesty. And in the church, honesty between leaders is essential. A public meeting might have satisfied curiosity, but would not have allowed the same depth of conversation. By speaking privately, the Pope and the Cardinal gave each other the chance to listen deeply. Of course, the fact that the news leak shows how much interest there is. Believers everywhere want to know what direction the church is taking, even though the Vatican made no official statement. The simple fact that the meeting took place has meaning. It signals that the Pope is open to listening, and that Cardinal Sarah remains engaged in the life of the church. For many, this alone is a source of hope. The reaction of the faithful also tells us something. Many Catholics are not experts in theology. They do not spend hours reading Vatican documents, but they know when something touches their daily lives. When priests hesitate, when bishops give different instructions, when debates rise in the parish, ordinary people feel the confusion. That is why the issue of fiducia supplicans is so sensitive. It is not a distant theory. It is a question of how people live their faith day by day. Cardinal Sarah understands this reality, and he voiced it to the Pope. It is also important to remember Sarah's broader vision. In his recent interview, he warned against two dangerous attitudes. One is the temptation to erase tradition in order to please the world. This, he said, turns faith into a passing fashion, weak and rootless. The other danger is to lock tradition away as if it were a museum piece. This makes faith rigid, lifeless, and unable to inspire. The true way, he explained, is to live tradition as a living source. Tradition should illuminate the present and give strength for the future. These words are not only theory, they are a guide for how the church can face debates like fiducia supplicans. If tradition is erased, the church loses its roots. If tradition is frozen, the church loses its breath. But if tradition is lived, then compassion and clarity can walk together. Pope Leo's meeting with Sarah could be a first step toward finding that balance. Another important point is Sarah's vision of the West. He has often said that Western society has lost its foundation. By replacing God with idols like money, success, and power, it has become fragile. He has warned that this loss of faith in God is not just a private issue, but affects the entire culture. For the church, this means that clarity of teaching is even more urgent. In a world where everything is uncertain, the church must stand firm. It must be a lighthouse that shines in confusion. When Sarah spoke of the Pope, however, his words were filled with respect. He said the Pope is bringing Christ back to the center of the church, and that this is what matters most. Even though he has concerns, he recognizes the value of the Pope's mission. He described the Pope as a servant of the gospel, not as a master. This shows that even in moments of disagreement, Sarah does not see himself as opposed to the Pope. Instead, he sees himself as contributing to the mission of the church, which belongs to Christ alone. The private audience can therefore be seen as a step toward mutual recognition. It is a moment where both men showed that they care about unity. They may see things differently, but they both know that division is dangerous. By meeting, they open the possibility for deeper dialogue, and this could be the beginning of a path where the church finds a way to move forward without leaving anyone behind. The source of the news, the website Non-Possum, also plays a role in how the event is understood. Known for its traditional perspective, it often highlights tensions in the church. Some may see this as biased, but others see it as a necessary voice that brings attention to what might otherwise be overlooked. In any case, the fact that this news spreads so widely shows that people are paying attention. Silence from official Vatican channels did not reduce interest. If anything, it increased it. The faithful want to know. They want to see where the Pope and his advisors will lead the church next. The lack of official statements also has meaning. In the church, silence can be powerful. It can mean waiting for the right moment. It can mean careful discernment. And it can mean protecting the integrity of a conversation until it is ready to bear fruit. Silence is not emptiness. It is often preparation. In this case, the silence following the meeting may be a sign that the Pope is considering how best to respond. What stands out most is that the meeting really happened. In the absence of official details, speculation will continue, but the fact itself speaks loudly. It shows that dialogue is happening, that concerns are being heard, and that the church is not ignoring the voices of tradition. For those who feared that traditional concerns would be left aside, this meeting is a reassurance. It also sets the stage for what may come. Will the Pope issue a clarification on fiducia supplicans? Will he seek to adjust its interpretation? Will he call for patience and unity while further reflection takes place? These are the questions now waiting for answers, and the faithful are watching closely.